What makes truly good beef for you? Is it just about, I don't know, a specific cut or a certain breed? Or could there be maybe a more efficient, perhaps even tastier way to produce it that's, well, rapidly gaining traction? Mm-hmm. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the fascinating and, frankly, quite revolutionary world of dairy beef crossbred cattle.
It really is fascinating.
Yeah, and our mission really is to unpack the very latest research on how these animals stack up against, their purebred dairy and traditional beef counterparts.
Right.
We're going to try and uncover some surprising performance traits, maybe some unexpected quality findings, and yes, the one big challenge that still needs tackling. Mm-hmm. This is all about pulling out the most important insights for you from all the data that's out there.
Exactly. And, for a long time, male dairy calves were often, underutilized. That's putting it mildly sometimes. Yeah. But with increasing demand for efficient protein production and some really significant advancements in genetics, we're seeing a fundamental shift.
A real change.
Yeah. More and more of these dairy beef crossbred cattle are now entering the market. And that's really prompted researchers to take a close look, examine their characteristics and, the products they yield.
Makes sense.
So the findings we'll discuss today, they're based on quite extensive retrospective data analysis and original research. It gives us a really clear picture, actually, of the key differences in performance and carcass traits.
Okay, let's unpack this then. So when these crossbreeds are in the feedlot, how do they actually, measure up? How do they perform compared to traditional beef breeds? What's the data showing?
Yeah, that's the core question, isn't it? And the answer is, a resounding yes, they absolutely do measure up. The data shows some really impressive findings.
Okay.
These dairy beef crossbred cattle, they show significantly better average daily gain, ADG, right? So they pack on weight faster each day.
Right, faster gain.
And improved feed to gain ratios. That's crucial for efficiency, how well they turn feed into muscle. Much better than purebred Holsteins.
Okay, better than Holsteins, but how about compared to traditional Angus or Hereford?
Well, and here's the real kicker. They perform comparably to conventional beef breeds.
Wow. Comparable.
Yes. Which is, that's a huge step forward for the industry.
That is incredible efficiency.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating here, I think, is the clear sustainability win this presents.
It truly is. Think about finishing times. These crossbreeds. They're reaching finishing weight approximately 20% faster than Holsteins.
20% faster.
Yeah. And this isn't just about speed, right? It's about fundamentally rethinking resource efficiency in meat production.
Less time, less feed.
Exactly. Yeah. Imagine producing the same amount of beef in less time with significantly reduced feed requirements. Uh-huh. That translates directly to, a lower carbon footprint, potentially less water usage, reduced land pressure, all per pound of beef produced.
That sounds like a significant stride towards, more sustainable meat.
It really is. And that's arguably the real game changer here for the industry and maybe even for the planet.
Okay, now, this next part, this is where I think it gets really interesting. Because at the end of the day, what consumers really care about is the actual meat quality, right?
Absolutely.
So, what did the research uncover there? How do these crossbreeds stack up on the plate? Let's maybe start with quality grade, prime choice.
Right. Well, the research here kind of defies some conventional wisdom. It actually shows that the percentage of dairy beef crossbreeds grading choice or higher, it's comparable to or sometimes even better than conventional beef cattle.
Better? Really? How?
Well, it appears they inherit those superior marbling traits from their Holstein lineage. Holsteins marble quite well.
Okay, right, the marbling.
But they hit that desired finishing weight much more quickly than a pure Holstein would.
Wow. Okay, so they get the marbling benefits without that really long finishing time of a pure dairy animal. That's pretty compelling.
It is.
But building on that, what about the actual eating experience? Did a recent study look into things like tenderness or flavor profiles?
It did, yes. And the findings there are quite surprising, actually.
Go on.
So this study found that purebred Holsteins, interestingly, ranked highest for tenderness.
Holsteins, highest for tenderness.
Yeah. Followed by the crossbreeds, and then conventional beef breeds came in third on tenderness in this particular study.
Okay.
But here's the crucial part, and this is where it gets, like I said, truly fascinating. The crossbreeds led in flavor.
Led in flavor. How so?
They received the highest rating for fat-like, and get this, buttery taste.
Buttery? Wow. So overall, eating quality.
Overall, they were rated second in eating quality, just behind the purebred Holsteins, mainly because of that tenderness difference, but ahead of the conventional beef.
That's a really provocative thought.
Yeah.
Because historically, premium beef is associated with that traditional beefy flavor.
Mm-hmm.
Does this butter-like flavor potentially redefine our idea of premium beef?
Well, it certainly raises the question, doesn't it?
Yeah, how might this shift things? Breeding programs, marketing, even what you and I expect when we buy a steak.
It raises precisely those questions. If consumers start to really prefer that unique buttery note, it could indeed reshape what we consider a desirable flavor profile. It could open up totally new avenues for how premium products are defined and marketed down the line.
Fascinating. Okay, so beyond the flavor and the marbling, what about the actual physical characteristics of the carcass itself? What's on the plate, literally, when we look at carcass yield?
Right, yield. Okay, so when it comes to carcass yield, these dairy beef crossbreeds, they typically have a slightly lower dressing percentage.
Okay, define dressing percentage quickly.
Sure. That's just the usable meat on the carcass as a proportion of the live animal's weight.
Got it. So lower dressing percentage than pure beef cattle.
Generally, yes. It's partly due to their sort of leaner build, perhaps, and sometimes lighter carcasses relative to their live weight compared to a really blocky beef animal. And on average, their fat thickness, say at the 12th rib, it usually falls somewhere between that of a full-blood beef animal and a leaner dairy animal.
Kind of in the middle.
Sort of in the middle, yeah. But importantly, overall, they offer a higher red meat yield than traditional dairy carcasses.
Okay, better than pure dairy.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And the best of these crossbreeds, they compare very favorably, sometimes even exceed the performance of conventional beef cattle in terms of total red meat produced.
Interesting. Now, meat color. That's traditionally been, a bit of a drawback for dairy beef, hasn't it? It often looks a bit darker, maybe not that bright cherry red consumers expect.
That's true.
I know I've seen it at the butcher counter. Retailers sometimes seem to avoid putting dairy and conventional beef side by side because of that color difference. Does crossbreeding help with this?
It absolutely does, and it's a really significant improvement for marketability. Research clearly shows crossbreeding effectively eliminates that darker color issue.
Oh, wow.
And not only that, it also seems to improve color stability, how long it stays looking good, by an extra 12 to 24 hours.
That's huge for retail. Better appearance, longer shelf life.
Exactly. A huge win for presentation and reducing waste.
Okay. And then there's muscle shape. I remember hearing that the loins, the steak cuts from finished Holsteins, were often smaller, maybe narrower, more angular, kind of a drawback.
Yes, that was definitely a perception and often a reality.
Is crossbreeding fix that too?
It seems to, yes. Researchers found that the crossbred longissimus muscle, that's the technical term for the main loin muscle where you get ribeyes and strip steaks.
Right. The good stuff.
The good stuff. They found those muscles were not only larger and rounder than those from pure Holsteins, but here's the clincher. Consumers and studies were actually unable to distinguish them visually from the loins of conventional beef cattle.
No kidding. So they look just like a regular beefsteak.
Pretty much, yes. Which is another major triumph for market acceptance and, just the visual appeal on the plate or in the meat case.
Okay, so we've got better performance, surprising taste results, better color, better shape. So what does all this mean for the bigger picture? For the beef industry as a whole, beyond just the meat itself, are there broader market benefits?
Oh, absolutely. One thing that's consistently remarkable is the consistency they can bring.
Consistency? How so?
Well, think about it. Dairy farms, they operate year-round, right? They provide a steady, predictable supply of offspring.
Unlike beef cow-calf operations, which were often more seasonal.
Exactly. That steady supply directly contributes to greater market stability, smoothing out the peaks and valleys in calf availability.
That makes sense.
And plus, modern dairy cattle, they're highly consistent genetically. They've been selected for generations for specific traits. This offers really strong potential for uniform, high-quality offspring when you match them with the right beef sires. Predictability.
Predictability and consistency. Okay. And then, thinking about records, traceability.
That's another huge advantage. Dairy farms, just by their nature, typically maintain much more comprehensive records than most conventional beef operations.
Like birth dates, health records.
Exactly. Detailed info on birth dates, performance metrics, sire identification, all that data is incredibly valuable, especially for branded beef programs that rely on telling a story.
Right, the story behind the steak.
Precisely. And also for international markets, which are increasingly demanding detailed traceability, knowing exactly where their food comes from and how it was raised.
Okay, this all sounds incredibly promising. I mean, it feels like a real potential transformation for the red meat industry.
Yeah.
But there's usually a catch, isn't there? What's the final hurdle? You mentioned a sticky challenge.
You're right. There is one significant issue that still needs to be fully controlled, and that's liver abscesses.
Liver abscesses, okay.
Yeah.
How big of a problem is that? Does it affect the animal?
Well, interestingly, they seem to have minimal impact on the animal's overall growth performance while it's alive.
Oh, okay. So the animal does okay.
Yeah, mostly. But they definitely complicate things significantly at the harvest stage at the packing plant.
How so?
Well, infected livers, they have to be condemned, obviously. But the process itself is tricky. They have to be carefully removed and disposed of individually.
Which slows things down.
Exactly. It slows down the processing line, and in some cases, the delays these cause at the packing plant can actually end up being more costly than the value of the liver itself. It's a bottleneck issue.
Ah, so it's not just about losing the liver itself, but the disruption it causes down the line affects the whole operation's efficiency.
Precisely. And these abscesses, they can also reduce the overall carcass yield slightly, and therefore the total profitability.
Okay. Is that the worst of it?
Well, there's one more wrinkle. When you get severe liver abscesses, sometimes the infection can spread to the surrounding tissue.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. And it can actually cause the liver to attach to nearby saleable muscle, like the diaphragm.
The diaphragm muscle. Isn't that skirt steak?
That's exactly right. Highly valuable cut, skirt steak. If that muscle is affected or adhered to the abscessed liver, it has to be condemned too. It's rendered unfit for human consumption.
Wow, so condemning a whole skirt steak.
Mm-hmm.
That's a significant economic loss from one abscess.
It really is.
Yeah.
It definitely impacts the total value you can get from that animal.
So it sounds like the scientific consensus is pretty clear then.
Yeah.
Controlling these liver abscesses is absolutely essential.
That's right.
It really remains the last major challenge in what otherwise seems like an overwhelmingly positive transformation happening in the red meat industry.
That sums it up well, yes. It's the main hurdle left to overcome.
Okay, so to kind of wrap things up for everyone listening, you've heard today that these dairy beef crossbred cattle, they're showing incredible promise, really quite amazing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
From faster growth rates, surprisingly good, eating quality, especially that flavor aspect.
Buttery, no, yeah.
Right. To enhance consistency and supply, better traceability throughout the chain. These animals are truly, it seems, changing the game.
They have that potential.
Of course, as we just discussed, there is that one major challenge, liver abscesses. But it's something scientists are actively working on, trying to find ways to control it. Progress is definitely being made there.
Yes, research is ongoing into dietary management, vaccines, other strategies. It's a key focus area. And a final thought, perhaps, for you to consider.
Yeah.
If this transformation in dairy beef continues and they manage to overcome this final challenge with liver abscesses, what might that mean for how we think about sustainable protein sources in the future? And could it fundamentally shift our perceptions, maybe even consumer preferences, for what quality beef truly means down the road?
That's a great question to leave people with. Food for thought. Definitely. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the really evolving landscape of the red meat industry.
My pleasure.
We definitely encourage you to keep an eye on this fascinating topic. It's changing fast.